Hey, welcome to the Grueling Truth's Last Stand for Liberty show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. This is the inaugural episode. I know you guys are usually used to hearing me talk about sports, but I've really gotten tired over the last couple months to watch the people, the 6 remaining candidates, I guess, or supposedly only remaining candidates, basically just put each other down, talk about nothing, say stuff, and then claim they didn't say it. So I always see people say, there needs to be a third party. Well, there is. It's called the Libertarian Party. I believe they have ballot access in every state. So there's 4 or 5 main candidates, which over the next week we're going to have them all on the air to kind of display or to tell us what their philosophy is, why they think they should be president. And our first candidate tonight is on the Libertarian platform. Let's welcome in Darryl Perry. How you doing, Darryl?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, and it's an honor to be on the first episode of the new show that you're doing.
Well, and we've got John McAfee tomorrow night. He was supposed to be on Tuesday, but he was coughing pretty good. He was sick, so we had to reschedule it. Have you always been a libertarian, and what brought you to the Libertarian Party if you haven't been?
As long as I've been involved in politics, yes, I've been a libertarian. I first heard the term in 1999 when I was working for a company that did traffic reports on various radio stations. One of the stations that I did traffic reports on carried the radio show for Neil Bortz, who back in the late 90s was an actual libertarian, both a big L, meaning member of the Libertarian Party, and a small L, meaning philosophically libertarian. So when I heard him talk about the fair tax, which is something that I now despise, it kind of made sense at the time, and so I started looking into that, and I heard him mention the Libertarian Party. I found the world's smallest political quiz put out by the Advocates for Self-Government. So I took that quiz, and I wound up being on the border between conservative and libertarian, sent off for information from the Libertarian Party, and, that's basically the beginning of the journey of how I became, where I am now. And I detail it, the journey, I detail it quite in depth in a book that I recently published in September of last year called A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. So, I'll summarize everything in the book because I'll give the book away. I actually have the audio book the audio version of the book available for free on the website of rebelsjourney.com. So, go listen to it, hear the entire thing for free. You don't have to buy the book.
Well, right there, you're different than the Republicans and Democrats because you're not out to make a buck off this then.
Right. I'm about spreading the message of liberty, not making money trying to promote a watered-down message or, some wishy-washy message that the Republicans and Democrats are doing.
Now, tell us a little bit about your background and why you feel you're qualified to be the President of the United States.
Well, let me sort of correct the question there, because most people, they will think, well, you're running for this office, so therefore you want the office. No. I'm running for the office because I want to promote the ideas of liberty, and running for office is a pretty good vehicle for being able to do so because you do get media. But my background is, well, I got a degree in broadcasting. I work in radio. I also own a small publishing company. So, I am sort of, I know it sounds cliche, but I am the everyman, if you will. I'm a low middle class worker that strives to be self-employed, which I think a lot of people do. And I just feel passionately about the ideas of liberty, which is why I'm running. I am not running to try to win. Winning would be the worst thing that could happen, honestly.
So basically you just want people to know what your thoughts and views are and try to get people to see it that way a little bit more, I guess?
To come aboard the ideas of liberty and expand the national discussion on certain topics that right now are a little taboo, specifically secession, legalizing prostitution, completely eliminating the drug war, not just, regulate cannabis like wine, only it's not regulated like wine. We're regulating it like cannabis because in Colorado and Washington, the first 2 states that, did this regulate cannabis like wine thing, they wrote up specific regulations for cannabis that do not apply to anything else. So the regulations that are in place in Colorado that they say is legalized like wine, they're completely unique to cannabis in Colorado. In Colorado, a non-resident can purchase, I believe it's a quarter ounce of smokable cannabis. There are different amounts that you can buy of edibles and tinctures, but there's no requirement or regulation on how many bottles of wine I could go into a grocery store and purchase. There's no regulation on how much liquor I could go into a liquor store and purchase, but there are regulations on how much cannabis one can purchase. So it's a complete lie to say that that's being regulated like wine. When I say end the drug war, I mean completely end the drug war. Stop arresting people for possessing, manufacturing, attempting to possess, attempting to manufacture, selling, attempted to sell, attempted to purchase, etc., of any substance. So everything, as far as I'm concerned, everything should be as legal as tomatoes. Because as far as I've been able to find, there are no regulations on tomatoes, specific to tomatoes. They're obviously are the general commerce regulations that apply of if you sell something, then some government agency is going to say that you need a license to do it. But there's nothing specific to tomatoes, meaning that when you go to the grocery store, you could buy every tomato that the grocery store has, and there's nothing illegal about that. You could go to the hardware store or the seed shop and buy every tomato seed that they have, and there's no regulations on that. But if you try to buy too many cannabis seeds in states where it's legal, then they'll tell you, no, you can't have that many plants, and there are all kinds of regulations. And nothing should be regulated at all. Everything, or let me rephrase that, nothing that causes a victim. So every consensual activity should be completely legal.
Now, my only problem with the legalizing of marijuana is I think like you. I think if what I'm doing is not hurting anybody else, why should you care, number one? And number two, why are you going to try to regulate what you do in my life? Now, my problem with the weed legalization now is this. I'm afraid, like the GMOs in the food, before you know it, they're going to put so much bad stuff in the marijuana that it's going to cause more harm than anything else.
I don't know. I think if you actually look back at various prohibitions that have happened, they generally will taint the stuff that's illegal. They don't taint it after it becomes legal. When alcohol prohibition was in effect in the 1920s, it was admitted that government agents were tainting the alcohol. They were intentionally poisoning the alcohol to basically teach people a lesson. We'll teach you to break the law, ha, ha, ha. And thousands of people have died. Not one person has ever died from smoking cannabis. Now, you might hear a story every now and then about somebody smoking something out of like a plastic bottle, and then they're dying from inhaling burnt plastic, not from whatever they were smoking out of the plastic bottle. And people wouldn't be smoking out of plastic Coke bottles if it weren't illegal to possess a pipe that had some residue in it. So people do risky things when something is illegal. So I think it's not a realistic fear to think that if cannabis is legal, all of a sudden it's going to start being poisoned. I think if it was going to be poisoned, it would be being done while it's illegal.
Yeah, but Darryl, I think the problem is this. You also wouldn't think that they would poison our food with pesticides from Monsanto either.
Well, that's not that's not the government that's mandating that. That's farmers that are making horrible decisions.
Yeah, but that's because of the government kind of forcing them to do it anymore. The pesticides, Monsanto is huge on the lobby front. And the fact that you've got countries like Russia that have banned the pesticides in the food and the GMOs, but yet it's not here, is what causes me concern with that.
Well, I'm not in favor of banning anything. I do think that government should stop giving subsidies to farm industry, big farm and big tobacco or big cotton or big corn or whatever. Taxpayer funds should not be going to that. And that's part of the problem is you've got, the people will look and say Monsanto's the problem, and then other people will look and say, well, government's the problem. And I look and say, you're both right. So if the government weren't giving Monsanto subsidies, then Monsanto would not be asking the government for favors, and it's this horrible incestuous relationship, just like between the banks and government, and pretty much anything else that relies on one way or another relies on a regulation to protect themselves from competition.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on cybersecurity? Because I think we're really weak there, and I think that it could be the greatest threat to this country right now.
I'm not in favor of using taxpayer funds to do anything. I do think that people should, use open source products. They should take a more active role in their own privacy, if you will. But so many people, they just, either don't pay attention or they think, well, there's got to be somebody out there that's going to protect me from stuff. So, people do need to take a more active role in this themselves, but I am in no means in favor of, some government program to come in as a solution, because government programs just create more problems.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem in this country anymore is the entitlements, because I think that when you're giving people a means to live, they're going to let you do whatever you want because they're afraid you're going to take away what they're getting from you.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like
people on the entitlements. They think, well, I deserve this, and if you decide that you're going to cut my cost of living increase, then, well, you're stealing money from me. Well, no, you're stealing money from somebody else using a middleman.
Now, what's your feeling on the IRS?
Needs to be abolished. All coercive forms of taxation need to be abolished.
Yeah, because, I mean, it was illegally passed anyways in 1913, because you read what the Founding Fathers wrote. The income tax was supposed to be on big corporations. You were never supposed to tax, because I read Thomas Jefferson's biography, and he states in there that nobody's income should ever be taxed by the federal government.
Right, and I don't think that there should be any forms of coercive taxation, whether it be income tax, consumption tax, property tax, etc. There should not be any tax that if someone refuses to pay, there is a penalty for doing so.
Now, I can give you an example. I'm going to bring up the public school system, which is a thing that I'm really against. I homeschool my youngest. My older one was at a school here in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. I get a call from them, all right, and he's an athlete, and they're allowed to randomly drug test an athlete. Now, they called me and told me he was refusing to take the random drug test. And they said he told us that it's against his Fourth and Fifth Amendment. And I said, well, number one, do you have probable cause to test him? Do you think that he's done drugs? And they told me no. I said, well, then by the Constitution you can't. And they said, well, the Constitution does not apply when you come in the doors of the school. And I mean, I remember being told in, I believe it was 8th grade American history, that I had no constitutional rights until my 18th birthday. Yeah. And I mean, the first thing I did is I went and I removed him from that school. Because, I mean, I'm not going to teach my kids. And see, people, I've got a cousin, son goes to a private Catholic school. He signed up voluntarily to be drug tested whenever they feel like. And what I told my cousin was this. I said, yeah, you may think that's great, but what you just did by having him sign that paper was teach him that it's all right to be searched without probable cause. I mean, so you just taught him to give up his Fourth Amendment. Yeah, and you have rights because you have rights. The Constitution doesn't grant anyone anything. The Constitution recognizes certain rights. Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't say that those rights are qualified. And I mean, that's the thing that drives me nuts. It's like the Second Amendment. I mean, the Second Amendment, I'm sure you're the same place I am here. I don't like the registration of guns. I don't like anything the government has to do with guns, because history shows you that before they ever take them away, the first thing they do is try to get a national registry for guns. Right. So now my big question to you is this. If you have so your intention is not to win. How do you ever change anything, though, if you don't get somebody that feels the way you do with people's liberty in there that wants to win to try to do something?
Well, here's the thing. When you're running as something other than a Republican or a Democrat, especially since you're not allowed in the national debates that happen after the primaries and before the general election, there's absolutely no chance that you can win. And that's not just me, being a pessimist. That's me being a realist and looking at history and seeing that the only people that have ever won the presidency since they've started having debates are people that are included in the debates.
Yeah.
So, and it's also really difficult to wind up qualifying for the debates where they say you have to poll at least 15% in 5 national polls leading up to the debates, but you're not included in any of the polls that they use to determine whether or not you poll at 15%. So how are you supposed to wind up polling when you're not included as an option in the poll, and you can't get in the debate unless you poll at a certain percentage when you're not included in the polls? So right now, the system is set up to where it's impossible for a Libertarian or a Green Party candidate or Constitution Party candidate or anything other than a Republican or a Democrat to wind up winning the presidency. So
but my question is this, though.
Right,
even though that is
true. I'm going to answer the question, Mike.
Go ahead.
Let me finish.
Sorry about that.
When the system is set up to where you aren't allowed to win, the only thing you can hope to do is spread a message. So that's why I'm running, is to spread a message.
Yeah, but do you think that when you do that, when you just come out and say you don't want to win, that it makes it maybe less people accessible to your message because they have a tendency to just kind of turn you off right then because they don't really know everything that's involved?
There are certainly going to be some people that would get turned off, and then there would be other people that would start to listen because they would say, wow, finally an honest politician, someone that admits that the system is rigged against them to where it's impossible for them to win.
Well, Darryl, I don't think you can use the word honest and politician in the same sentence without laughing. So,
right, and I cringe when I refer to myself as a politician because I don't consider myself to be one, but most people will say anybody that runs for office is politician.
Yeah. Because, see, I think this. I think in the end, even if you're the president, you don't control anything. He's a puppet for the people that do run everything. And I don't think people really understand that. And I think it's just like all the racial stuff going on now. It's anytime somebody disagrees with somebody, it's like Donald Trump. They attack him as being a racist. But I think the main reason for that is if they can get the common people fighting amongst themselves about race, it's kind of like the puppet master. You're out here looking at this while he's robbing your pockets behind your back.
Right, and it's divide and conquer. And it's not just about race. It's not just about taxation. It's not just about, income inequality or fill-in-the-blank issue du jour. There's always going to be something that, the powers that be will conjure something up to get people to disagree so that they never realize, hey, wait a second, it's not a me versus you, it's an us versus them trying to take our stuff and our rights.
Yeah. And, what's your opinion on the other Libertarian presidential candidates?
I think several of them don't understand what a Libertarian is, and I will leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple that don't. So, from watching the debate, they kind of stood out. So, but any final words? You want to tell people where they can find out more about your campaign? You can promote your radio show stuff a little bit?
Yeah, so you can go to DarrylWPerry.com. That's DARRYL, middle initial W, Perry, PERRY.com. And there you can donate. And I'm doing a very unique sort of campaign financing thing for my campaign to where I'm only accepting alternative currencies, meaning Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies, gold, silver, and other metals. So if you don't have Bitcoin, I've actually teamed up with FPP Crypto Exchange to where they are selling people Bitcoin to be donated. So you can set it up to where you can actually wind up donating if you don't have Bitcoin or gold or silver. And there's also on there now where you can donate airline miles or hotel points. So there are other things of value that can wind up being donated. And again, DarrylWPerry.com. And if you click on the bio, there's links to Free Press Publications, which is my publishing company, and links over to my podcast as well.
And I assume that's where people can find your books also?
They can find the books from Free Press Publications.
Free Press Publication. All right. Well, Darryl, it was a pleasure having you in. I wish you the best of luck with your run, and hopefully you can make a little bit of an impact out there for us.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks a lot, Darryl.
Bye.
All right, guys. We will have Libertarian candidate John McAfee on the show tomorrow. Make sure you check out The Grueling Truth at gruelingtruth.net. Check out our sponsors, which would be gridironmo.com, footballvideos.com, steelbergbox.com. So make sure you check all those out. So for Darryl Perry, this is Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth's Last Stand for Liberty. We'll catch you next time.